more. Unchaperoned and left to our own untutored judgment, as lawyers or legislators, our goals and make for fuller. When you're little and live in trees like our arboreal ancestors.
Tonight's talk, this is the most popular talk we've ever done in 50.
Yeah, all good, bro. All good.
Tonight's talk, this is the most popular talk we've ever done in 15 years. Tonight is the third, so it's been a weekend of Jordan Peterson, which has been a huge pleasure. For anyone who doesn't know him, and last night I think it was one babe in arms, and tonight it's probably my mother. He was an associate professor at Harvard University and is now the professor of clinical psychology at Toronto. His first book was a huge success. It revolutionized the psychology of religion, and his latest book, The 12 Rules of Life, is set to do exactly the same. Just a few housekeeping things. At the end of the talk, we're going to have a Q&A, which I'm going to moderate. So do prepare your questions. Please make them questions. And also for those people in the live stream, there'll be posted notes, and you can hand questions to the ushers, and we'll be taking those as well. I look forward to that. And at the end of it, we're going to be doing not so much a signing, but here on stage a dedication. Everyone's book is, or pretty well everyone's book is already signed. So if you don't want a dedication, then just leave. On the third page, you'll find the signature. Last night there was a huge queue, as you can imagine. In order to make the queue run smoothly, and sorry to sound bossy, but he's not going to be doing selfies. Just because it means he's got to stand up the whole time, and it'll slow down the flow. But he's very happy to be photographed, and you can photobomb him if you'd like. Also, because all of us, particularly me, are really keen for him to solve the problems of our lives, please resist doing that during the dedication, because it'll really slow everything down. I think the three things that you can take away from this evening, and you'll be the judge, is first of all, be inspired by the talk. Secondly, read the book. And
tell me that went flat already. Why is that not playing? Ah, it connects to the bloody Bluetooth, eh? Come on.
It's hashtag the rules of 12 rules of life. So without further ado, please welcome one of the world's great public intellectuals.
I'm just not wasting my
Jordan
time
Peterson.
doing.
Thank you.
Why is this? Is it actually going to play or what? So, introduce Jordan B. Peterson. Have they cut the audio off this? Oh, no, we got it. Oh, we got it.
So I thought I'd talk about my book tonight. I've given 2 talks now, and I didn't actually talk directly about it. I sort of talked around it. So I thought, I don't like to give the same talk twice. So I thought I'd actually walk through it and outline it a little bit. And so I had to spend most of the day memorizing the rules. You know, you'd think if you worked on something for 3 years, or it's been 5 years, I guess, you'd actually have it memorized. But memory is a very strange thing, and it's very particular and goal-oriented. And I actually didn't have the rules memorized. It's really not their numbers, so hopefully I do by now. So I guess we're going to find out. But I have a copy of the book here in case I forget. So I think we'll go through them one by one, and we'll see how that goes. It's 7 o'clock, so all right, good. The first rule, which is kind of a comical rule, is stand up straight with your shoulders back. And it's a meditation, among other things, on the habits of lobsters. I read some papers on lobsters, well, must be 10 years ago, I guess, and they just absolutely blew me away.
It's called rage bait, bro. Good job falling for it. Dumbass.
And one of the things I've really loved about being a psychologist, there's many things, but I've really loved psychoanalytic theory and the great clinicians, the behaviorists as well. I mean, Freud, Jung, Adler, Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow, the behaviorists like Skinner and the cognitive behaviorists. I mean, I've learned a tremendous amount from reading the clinicians. And so if any of you are interested in psychology, I would really recommend reading the great clinicians, because you learn so much about life. It's crazy by reading them. So that's been fun. But then on the entirely other end of the spectrum, where I've learned most about psychology, is from the really low, what would you call them? The really science-oriented animal behaviorists. That's who they get into the neuroscientists, right? They were the animal behaviorists first of all, and then they turned into the neuroscientists. And I've learned a tremendous amount from them. They're such clear thinkers. The best of the bunch, I think, there's 2 of them. One named Jeffrey Gray, who wrote a book called The Neuropsychology of Anxiety, which is just a deadly book. It's impossible to read. It takes like 6 months to read it, because I think he read like 1,800 papers to write it or something like that. And he actually read them. That's the cool thing. And he understood them, which is really something. Then there's another guy named Jaak Panksepp, who wrote a book called Affective Neuroscience, which outlines his study, for example, of rats. He was the guy who learned that rats laugh if you tickle them with the end of a pencil eraser, but they laugh ultrasonically like bats. So you have to slow down the ultrasonic vocalization before you can hear them giggle. And you think, why the hell would you spend your time tickling rats with a pencil and making them laugh? But see, what he demonstrated there was that there was a play circuit in mammals. That there's a psychobiological basis for rough and tumble play, for example. It's a bloody big deal, you know, discovering a whole new circuit in the brain. That's like discovering a continent. It's Nobel Prize winning stuff. And Panksepp's Affective Neuroscience, I would highly recommend that. So there's this other book I know about too, which is 12 Rules for Life, which you could also look into if you want. Anyways, I was reading these articles on lobsters, and I
56% unsubscribed. Perfect. Just what I wanted.
Lobsters govern their postural flexion
Love
with
it.
serotonin.
You're only welcome here if you're actually trying to improve your life.
So flexion is this.
If you're just going to listen and do nothing,
wow,
nice
so
to leave.
interesting, because depressed people crouch over.
Simple as that, guys.
Link between those 2 things, and then I went and read a whole pile of papers on lobster and lobster neurochemistry. Lobster neurochemistry is actually quite well understood, because they have a fairly simple nervous system, right? And so if you want to understand a complex nervous system, it's a good idea to understand a simple one first and then sort of elaborate outwards. And it turns out that serotonin governs status. It governs status, emotional regulation, and posture in lobsters, just like it does in human beings. And so that was just blew me away. And so one thing that chapter talks about is the fact that if a lobster is defeated in a dominance battle, you can give it essentially antidepressants, and it will fight again. And that just blew me away. You know, it's so remarkable, because one of the things it tells you is that, so if you're imagine if you could be lobster top dog or bottom dog. Imagine there's 10 strata in the lobster hierarchy. So you could be number 1, right, top lobster, number 10, bottom lobster. If you're bottom lobster, you have low serotonin levels and high dopamine levels. That's the neurochemical that human beings don't produce. And if you're a top lobster, you have high serotonin levels and low dopamine levels. And you can move a lobster in its dominance hierarchy by moderating its levels of serotonin. And I thought that's so interesting, because what it means is that the counter that keeps track of our status, and we have a counter in a sense in our minds that keeps track of our status, is 1/3 of a billion years old. And what that also means is that the idea of the hierarchy, let's call it a dominance hierarchy, because within lobsters it's kind of like a physical prowess hierarchy, something like that. The idea of the hierarchy is at least 350 million years old. And so I read that and I think, well, so much for the idea that human hierarchies are a sociocultural construct. It's like, no, that's wrong. It's not just a little bit wrong, it's unbelievably wrong. It's mind-bogglingly wrong, right? And it's, right, and so hierarchies have been around for 1/3 of a billion years, and we have a neurochemical system that modulates our understanding of those hierarchies. And then also, and this is the interesting thing too, and this is why people's reputations are so important to them, there's lots of reasons, but this is one of them, is that where this counter that you share with lobsters rates you in terms of your hierarchical position determines the ratio of negative emotion to positive emotion that you feel. And that's also an absolutely mind-boggling idea for 2 reasons. One is it tells you why it's so hard on people to be put down. Because it doesn't just upset them in the moment, it changes the way their entire system responds to the world, so that they now experience more positive emotion and less negative emotion. So that's really rough. And then there's a corollary to that too, which is like, there's a very tight relationship between your belief system and your dominance hierarchy position. It's complicated, but it's worth going through. Like, let's say that, so I have a certain amount of status as a professor, and I have the, let's call it the what would you say? I've been granted the entitlement to a certain position in a social hierarchy. Now, the question is, why do I have a valid claim to that position? And the answer, hypothetically, is because I know enough so that my claim to the position is valid. So then if you stand up in the audience and challenge my beliefs and show that I'm wrong, you might say, well, I get upset because I'm wrong. But the more accurate reason that I get upset is because you're indicating to the crowd that my position in the hierarchy of authority is invalid. And by doing that, you lower me in the hierarchy and you mess around with the neurochemical systems that are regulating my emotions. And so if you're interested, at least in part, in why people are so prone to defend themselves and their beliefs in the service of their position, then that's why. And so that's a great example of how you can learn these unbelievable things by stumbling across a rather obscure biological fact. It just what would you say? It's like a series of dominoes. And that's also why biological facts are so useful. It's like, we don't have to argue about whether or not social hierarchies, as I said, or hierarchies are social constructs. A given hierarchy is influenced in its structure by sociocultural conditioning, let's say, but the fact of the hierarchy, so like the part of your brain that detects and regulates your response to hierarchies is older than the part of your brain that recognizes trees. Like, it's old. It's really, really fundamental. And almost all social animals organize themselves as social in hierarchies, because now the other thing that chapter 1 is a bit of a meditation on what might constitute a hierarchy. One of my business colleagues, a former student of mine from Harvard, very, very smart guy. He's got a graduate degree in engineering from MIT and a PhD in psychology from Harvard. So there's like one of him in the whole world. And he's a very smart guy. And he helped me design the self-authoring suite, by the way. And he's been working for about 20 years on that. That's a suite of programs that helps their lives and straighten them out. He told me to stop using the word dominance hierarchy. And he said the reason for that was that it was infested with Marxist presuppositions. And it really bothered me when he first said that, because I've been using the word for years, dominance hierarchy. He said, we had a discussion about that. He said, well, it's predicated on the idea that you climb up the hierarchy, human hierarchy, as a consequence of the expression of power. It's like, that's wrong. You climb up valid hierarchies as a consequence of the expression of competence. And that's actually technically right. He was exactly the right person to tell me that, because he had done his PhD on what predicts success in Western hierarchies. And the answer is quite clear. General cognitive ability, some prefrontal ability as well, which was what he specifically tested. So intelligence, roughly speaking, although it's a little bit more elaborate than intelligence, but that's close enough. And trait conscientiousness accounts for about 50% of the variance in long-term success. And you think, well, hey, how do you want your society to be structured? It seems pretty good to me that smart, hard-working people are the ones most likely to succeed. That's not a bad empirical test of the validity of a structure, especially given how much vagary there is in life. Lots of random things happen to people, but it's better to be born 3 standard deviations above the mean in intelligence in the West than it is to be born 3 standard deviations above the mean in wealth in relationship to where you'll end up when you're 40. So he said to use the word competence hierarchy, or we decided that, and I think that's much better. So chapter 1 is a bit of a meditation on the nature of hierarchies and the biochemistry of hierarchy, but it's also an injunction about how to present yourself, because you want to present yourself to the world in a manner that doesn't disgrace you in some sense. That might be a good way to think about it. And you don't want to disgrace yourself, because the consequence of disgrace is emotional dysregulation, more pain, less positive emotion. And so the best way to present yourself is to stand up forthrightly and to stretch out, and to occupy some space, and you make yourself sort of vulnerable by doing that, because you open up the front of your body, right? But it's a sign of confidence, and that way people are most likely to give you the benefit of the doubt. And that's a good way to start regulating your mood. But not only does it directly regulate your mood to stand up, because it's so tightly associated, like posture reflection is associated with serotonin and emotional regulation, but also because if you straighten up and you present yourself in that manner, then other people are more likely to take you seriously. And that means they'll start treating you as if you're a number 1 lobster instead of a number 10 lobster. And that's another way that you can at least give yourself the bloody benefit of the doubt, right? And confront the world in a courageous manner. And that's a really good way of figuring out how to establish yourself in multiple competence hierarchies, because one of the general rules of thumb about how to be successful is to confront things that frighten you forthrightly and with courage. And that's kind of a universal strategy for success. And so that's what the first chapter is about. So that's quite fun. My graduate students, I told them these lobster stories. My graduate students, when we used to go out for breakfast, and they were a very competitive bunch, very fractious and witty, and they were always trying to get one over on each other, and making some witty put down or something like that. And it got to the point in the restaurants where they put their claws in the air and click like this when they, got one over on one of their colleagues, which was very peculiar and strange and very funny as well. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2.
You say you are morally obligated to do remarkable things. Why?
Well, I think partly because life is so difficult and challenging that unless you give it everything you have, the chances are very high that it will embitter you, and then you'll be a force for darkness and not good. And so, the fact that life is short and can be brutal can terrify you into hiding and avoiding, but it can also, you can flip that on its head and understand that since you're all in anyways, you might as well take the risks that are adventurous. And that's a very good thing to understand. And what is also useful to understand in that manner is that there isn't anything more adventurous than the truth. This is something that took me a long time to figure out. Well, you can craft your words to get what you want, and people do that all the time. They craft their words so they can avoid taking responsibility for things they should take responsibility for, or they can craft the words to gain an advantage that they really don't deserve. That's what you do when you manipulate. And the problem with that, you might say, well, why not do that if I can get what I want? And the answer to that is, you aren't necessarily the best judge of what you need. And it's easy to be deluded in what you want. And that's the sort of delusions that people chase if they chase power. If you decide instead that you're going to just say what you believe to be true, you have to let go of the consequences. And you might think, well, I don't want to let go of the consequences because I want to control what's going on. But what you miss then is adventure, because if you don't control what's going on, you don't know what the hell's going to happen. And maybe that's exciting. And actually, there's no doubt about it. And then you have the additional advantage if you're attempting to say what you believe to be true and attempting to act in the manner that you think is most appropriate. That's genuinely you. And you have the force of reality behind you. You know, obviously, that's what you have if you're trying to, say, live in the truth, is you have the force of reality behind you. That seems like a good deal. Then you have the reality and the adventure. So why is that a moral obligation? Well, if you hide and you don't let what's inside of you out, and you don't bring into the world what you could bring, and you become cynical and bitter, you will start doing very dark things. So you'll start, not only will you not add to the world what you could add, but you will start being jealous of people who are competent and doing well and work to destroy them. So that's the pathway to hell, really. So
One of the trends that I've been railing against most recently has been cynicism. There's this pervasive belief that everything is terrible and it can't get better.
Yeah.
And the people who believe that it can improve are dumb, delusional,
Yeah.
the problem. And I don't know where it comes from. I don't
Well,
like
it's
it.
the beginning of wisdom, cynicism. This is part of the reason why it's hard to combat. You know, because people start out naive. And naive people are optimistic, but not really. They're just naive. And naive people have no idea that there's, say, malevolence in the world. They have no idea that there's malevolence in their own heart. They're sheltered and dependent. And when that breaks, it often breaks into cynicism. And so cynicism is actually an improvement.
The veils have fallen from your eyes.
Exactly. The problem with cynicism is that, especially if it's allied with a kind of arrogance, is that you can end there. And that's a big mistake. So then the question becomes, well, once you've been bitten hard and you're no longer naive, well, that is very hard on your optimism, let's say. So then the question is, how do you restore that without reverting to the naivety, which you can't do anyways without blinding yourself once you've been bitten? And the answer to that is you substitute courage for naivety, and you regain your optimism as a moral imperative, right? So one of the things you might ask yourself is, well, if the future is likely to be catastrophic in a variety of different ways, which is definitely the case, both socially and personally, then what attitude should you bring to bear on that? And the answer might be, well, if you were courageous and faithful, and I can explain what that means, then you would conduct yourself in a manner that met the future head on, with the presumption that you can manage it. And this is the presumption we should bring to bear politically. You know, the people who are using fear to garner power point to the various apocalypses that might befall us. And it's difficult to counter them because the future is always an apocalyptic horizon. Like, everything can fall apart and has before and might well again and will, in fact, in your life as you age and die. And so it's very easy to conjure up an apocalypse. Then the question becomes not, is that apocalypse potentially real? Because the answer to that is yes, but what attitude should you have towards that? Naive, that's not good. Cynical, that's better, but it's still not good. It's another form of hell, and it also tends to make the potential apocalypses more likely. Well, so what do you have when you move beyond cynicism? And what you have when you move beyond cynicism is wisdom. And that's not naive, it's courageous. And one of the things that religious people have done relatively badly, especially in recent years, is they've failed to delineate the relationship between faith and courage. You know, people like Dawkins and the New Atheists, they point to faith and they describe it as something like belief in foolish superstitions. But that isn't really what faith in the deepest sense means. It means that you are willing to act out the proposition that you can ride the wave no matter how big it becomes. And that we can all do that together, especially if we do that in goodwill. And I think that's a much more appropriate way to confront the
Cheers,
future.
guys.
And it's also the proper medication for cynicism. Now, the other thing about cynicism that's interesting too is that cynics aren't cynical enough about their own cynicism, right? Because you can get doubtful enough to start doubting the validity of your own cynicism. It's like, what makes you so smart? What makes you the judge of being? You know, the Columbine kids were like that. You know, they decided that existence itself was unsustainable given its cruelty, and that the proper response was to put up a giant middle finger to man and God, right? Well, here's a way of being cynical about cynicism. How does your cynicism let you off the hook? Right? How does your cynicism justify your desire to avoid necessary responsibility and to pursue your own short-term hedonic gains? It's like, why aren't you cynical about your own doubt? And that's another place where wisdom begins. It's like, that's two, right? Cynicism beats naivety, but it's not the ultimate destination. And you should be cynical enough to question the moral validity of your own resentment and your own, what would you say, your own turning away from the world.
The way that I see it, given that we don't know the future, given that much of our motivations are invisible to us, we're not a crystal pond that we can see into. You have to have some form of delusion about what's going to happen in the future. You're trying your best to see the way that it's going to be, but given that the glass could be half empty or half full, why not have a delusion that's going to be useful to you? One of hope, even in the face and the understanding that things might be difficult and that there's going to be obstacles.
You know, there was a line of social psychology that pursued that argument for quite a while, that made the argument that people had to have positive illusions about the future, and that was the fundamental way that people staved off despair and bolstered their self-esteem. But I don't think we need to separate out the distinction between fantasy and delusion. You do have a fantasy about the future. You have to, because like you said, it's not structured. So you have to provisionally map the future. That's what a plan is.
Positive
That's what
goal.
a strategy is. Yeah. Right. But that doesn't make it a delusion. Like, it becomes a delusion when the map bears no relationship to the underlying territory. So if you have a strategy for the future, you know, maybe let's say that your strategy for the future, just for the sake of argument, is that you have 5 million YouTube subscribers in 3 years. Well, you have no evidence
Never have to fully agree with anyone.
of the
Yeah.
strict sort.
What you can
that
take away
that's
from
how
it,
it's
right?
going to be, because anything could happen between now and 3 years from now, let's say. But there's no reason to call that a
One sec, we got a customer call. Hey brother, what's going on? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, just tinkering on one of the Zeds at the moment.
Oh, you still got one?
Yeah, I've still got 10.
Keep you really?
Yeah, you want some more?
No, I don't.
Oh yeah, so you want to get rid of yours. What's the deal?
I'm selling all my cards, basically.
Ooh, offer swap deals. Let's go. Yeah,
Changing plans.
yeah,
Much.
yeah, fair enough.
Thinking I might even sell the property in the next couple of years.
Yeah, you've done so.
The day if I do, I've got no list of all my cards anyway.
Yeah. There we go.
I've just sort of lost interest.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
I've done a shit. So,
Different priorities and that. Yeah.
yeah, I want to get them all just running properly.
Just run right. Do you want to get them like warranted and registered, or some of the reach, aren't they? Wasn't one of them de-reach, or?
It's the rich, which I want to take it next week and see what I have to get done. I just need to do an exhaust on it.
Yeah, usually they want brake rotors as well. They always piss around with that. They're really picky about brake rotors and bushings.
Yeah,
So yeah, they basically always want new rotors on them the moment they're worn down or grooved at all. That's the most common. Yeah. Yeah, but you gotta have some ROI on it, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
I was kind of thinking I might even try and sell this group, the three of them.
Yeah.
Um,
Because that's the thing is finding someone to buy three could be a challenge, but yeah, maybe somebody wants to mess around with all three of them, right?
yeah, they try.
Yeah.
So, but initially I just want to get them all running cleanly properly. No one
Yep.
any fuel in it, so I want to get that out, get that petrol up and one.
Yep.
And just get them all run.
Just get them all running up.
They're not decided what I'm going to do as far
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I gotta get some of that roof. I gotta get some of that head flashing off you anyway. So I'll wander out your way and we can shoot the shit about it. Figure out a plan. No worries at all. Yeah, that's probably the best. Are you around this weekend or?
Yeah.
Yeah, should be around. All right, man. I can probably buzz out there later today. Yeah, we'll make a plan about it. Could be some good content for my YouTube live. Getting another 3 of them running. So set up a tripod in the corner. Yeah, sweet, easy. Cheers, bro. All right, man. Yeah, I'll give you a buzz a bit later today. Probably head out your way. I'm going to head to town a bit later, so I'll probably buzz out your way then and we'll shoot the shit.
Yeah, no worries.
No worries, man. All right, thank you very much. Yep.
I should have a phone around with me if I'm not just turn up.
Yeah. Just text me that gate code again, eh?
Yeah,
I'll pass my way in. All right, cheers, bro.
Okay.
All right, see you soon. See you.
It's one hypothetically possible path of potential, and then you can make the sacrifices necessary to bring that about. So
That's another 3 cars to get running. That's 3 of these that he's got sitting in a shed that don't run. Go over there, get them running so he can sell them. Yeah, it's another job on. See if you aim at stuff, you know. You can make it happen. The phone just rings by itself, you know. I haven't heard from that person in a couple of months, and it's just, yeah, cool.
even though it's a fantasy because it maps something that isn't there, it's not a delusion. It's a delusion when you're ignoring elements of your own experience that would inform your fantasy more effectively. You're ignoring them so that you can live in a positive representation of the future without having to pay the appropriate price for it.
One of my favorite ideas I learned over the last couple of years is the inner citadel from Isaiah Berlin. Do you know this? So Isaiah Berlin says, when the natural road toward human fulfillment is blocked, human beings retreat into themselves, become involved in themselves, try to create inwardly that world which some evil fate has denied them externally.
That's a delusion often.
If you cannot obtain from the world that which you really desire, you must teach yourself not to want it. If you cannot get what you want, you must teach yourself to want what you can get. This is a very frequent form of spiritual retreat and depth into a kind of inner citadel in which you lock yourself up against all of the fearful ills of the world. Mutual friend Rob Henderson explained it in a simpler way. If your leg is wounded, you can try to treat the leg. And if you can't, then you cut the leg off and denounce that the desire for legs is misguided and must be subdued. And I think that we see this everywhere.
Well, okay, so imagine that you lay out a plan and it meets with an impediment and it knocks the slats out from underneath the plan. Okay, now you retreat. Okay, now you have an option when you're retreating, and one option is to construct a world in fantasy where you're taking revenge on those who wronged you and getting what you want. That's a pathway to madness. So often people who develop serious delusions do develop, what would you call them? They're compensatory fantasies, and then they start to dwell in them, and often for hundreds of hours. So the kids, again, who shot up the Columbine High School, they dwelt in a fantasy world for hundreds of hours before they undertook their dreadful actions, right? But you can also flip back into yourself, let's say, and you can, this is like confession and atonement. It's the proper way to think about it, is you can think about what it is that you did wrong or insufficiently that led to the collapse of your plan, right? So that's the first investigation. I made some sacrifices. I attempted to bring about a particular form of the future. It didn't happen. Okay, why? Well, the world is set against me and the cosmos is evil and there's no God and I'm bitter and cynical. That's one potential explanation, right? Poor me, right? And I'm not trying to be flippant about this because sometimes people's dreams are quite realistic and they still fail catastrophically. It can be brutal. Maybe you did make a lot of good decisions and you suddenly got ill, or someone in your family did, and everything went to hell on you. It doesn't have to be because you've done something cardinally foolish that you fail. It's built into the structure of the world. But it doesn't matter. You can also retreat into yourself and you can say something like, all right, I need to retool my conception of strategy, but also potentially my conception of goal. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. Maybe I have to look somewhere else. And you can open yourself up to a revelation. So there's a gospel statement that's very relevant to this. So Christ tells his followers that if they knock, the door will open. If they ask, they'll receive. And if they seek, they'll find. And so it sounds magical. It sounds like the sort of thing that the new atheists would have a field day with, but that's not a wise interpretation of that saying. The proper interpretation is something more like a recognition of the way thought works. So imagine your plans didn't work out. Okay, now you sit down and you say to yourself, I'd like to know, even if the world was conspiring against me and my failure was 95% the fault of external occurrences and other people, what did I do that wasn't as good as it could have been, and where did I fail to look so that the probability of my failure was higher? Now, to ask that question, you have
All
to
good,
want
man.
to answer. That's
Putting in the
what
work.
it means to knock or to ask or to seek. This is no joke. It's like you have to want to know. And it's a very painful thing to do, because especially if you had given it your all to the degree you were able, and you have reason to be bitter, you're going to be searching for the errors that you still made. And discovering your own errors is always extremely painful, right? Especially if they're errors that you're in love with. And so you have to be willing to strip yourself down. That's what humility means fundamentally. And then, but the advantage is, this is why it's so useful to listen to people. You might find out where you're stupid, and then you can stop being stupid. And so one of the reasons you confess your sins, let's say, is because you want to discover where you're insufficient. Now, it's painful. It's painful to encounter an impediment in the form of someone else's opinion that might show you where you're blind and ignorant, or willfully blind even. But the advantage to that is you can rectify the error, and then as you move forward, you're stronger. One of the things I taught my kids, and I hope at least somewhat successfully, was that you should always ask a stupid question. And that doesn't mean the sort of question that someone who wasn't paying attention would ask. If you're listening to someone and you don't understand what they're saying, and you reveal that, you're revealing your ignorance. And maybe you're in a room full of people and you think you're the only person stupid enough to not get it, which is very rarely the case, by the way. The thing is, though, if you reveal that ignorance to yourself and to the other person, they can rectify it. And if you do that 1,000 times, you're not ignorant anymore. And this is a real pathway to success, too. You see it, you do this because you ask real questions in your podcast, and Rogan does this. Okay, Rogan's always trying to be a little smarter than he already is. And then that works, iterated. Like, if you ask 1,000 dumb questions and you listen to the answer, then you know 1,000 things, some of them deep, that you didn't know before. So that's the advantage to searching your soul, let's say, for unrequited sins and attempting to atone. That's not a delusion, right? It's an attempt to set yourself right. It's the opposite of a delusion, even though there can be a fantastical element to it.
Yeah, the conversation around people who try their best, do as many things right as they could, and yet still fall short because the world is random and unfortunate things happen. Happiness, as far as I can see it, sits in the gap between your expectations and reality. But the problem here is that people who have high standards often end up feeling a lack, right? How can people who strive like this avoid feeling despondent and falling short of their own high standards? I've heard you talk about the statue of David saying something like, "You are not all that you could be."
Yeah.
And as soon as you posit an ideal, you begin to compare yourself to that ideal.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's a good question. I mean, the ultimate ideal is also the ultimate judge, because the ultimate ideal is something against which you fall far short. And that might be so painful that you can barely stand it. But then what you do is you two things, I suppose, is you lower the ideal and you raise your estimation of your potential. And what do I mean by lower the ideal? Well, if you're comparing yourself to someone or even to a future self, and the gap is so painful that it paralyzes you, then you've created a dragon that you don't have the tools to master. And so what you have to do is you have to scale the dragon down to size. And you want to scale the dragon down to size until it's a size that you are willing to move toward, however small that is. Now, you know, if you're here and your ideal is here and that gap is unbearable, then you reduce the gap and you reduce the gap. And you're going to have to do that anyways, because you're not going to move from where you are to perfect in one fell swoop, right? There's going to be incremental steps. So you have to fill in that hierarchy of progression with a high enough resolution representation so that you can start to move forward. And then you should be buttressed. There's another gospel comment that's very interesting. It has to do, it's called the Matthew principle. And the Matthew principle is, to those who have everything, more will be given, and from those who have nothing, everything will be taken. Now, it's brutal because it implies that reality works like this. When you're moving up, you go like this, right? And that's pretty nice. That's a lot better than this. But when you're going down, you go like that, right? It's like downhill, cliff. Okay, so you want to avoid the downhill path. Well, if the uphill path is like this, which is like exponential, let's say, or geometric, then what that means is that it doesn't matter how big the first steps you take uphill are, even if they're trivial, even if they're shameful in their size, because you're so useless, that if you're disciplined in that, you'll speed up extraordinarily rapidly. And so that's the good news, you might say, is that you can take very small steps, even ones that might be shameful in their size, and you have to admit that.
Jordan Peterson.
But once you get the ball rolling, it doesn't
Jordan
roll
Peterson.
in a linear fashion. It rolls
Hey,
in a
Lakota.
geometric fashion. And this is a really good thing to know because it can take the sting out of the realization of your own stupidity.
Appreciate
It's
it, Middle.
like, yeah, you know, everybody has their weak sides, let's say. Things they're embarrassed about. When
Nobody
I
wants
first
to do the
started going
work,
to
man.
Gym, I was
And they
like,
complain about life.
how old was I? 1985, 23.
That's why I'm kind of done just talking the whole time. I got stuff to do, so this is the stuff that taught me, so.
Right, 27-inch waist, something like that. I smoked like mad and I drank too much. Like I wasn't in good shape. The first attempts forward I took in the gym, I went to this swimsercise class.
It's not going well.
It was me and this like really fat guy, young guy, probably not in any worse shape than me, and like 7 old women over 70, and they could outswim me. Like it was pretty damn humiliating, and so I did a semester of that and got myself in somewhat better shape, and then I started to go to the gym to work out, to lift weights. And that was also rough because, you know, I'd be underneath a bloody bench press trying to lift 75 pounds off the rests, and, you know, some muscle-headed bastard would come over and tell me how to do it, and it's like, yeah, thank you, but you know, it's embarrassing, and lots of times people won't do things like go to the gym because they're so embarrassed about how they look or what sort of shape they're in. And it's a pain to start at the bottom, but you start at the bottom where you're weak. And if you want to
Got to meet yourself where you're
what's
at.
weak, you have to accept the fact that you're at the bottom and that the first steps are going to be painful. You know, it took me about 3 years, but I stopped smoking, and then I stopped drinking, and I gained 40 pounds of muscle in like 3.5 years, something like that. I basically had to stop doing that because I had to eat like 6 times a day. It was crazy. But I got a lot more physically confident and a lot more coordinated, because working out with dumbbells makes you coordinated, right? Because it exercises all the small ligaments and the tendons. And so my lower body in particular got a lot more coordinated. Then I could dance, so that was better when I was going out dancing, because I did a lot of that in graduate school. But the point of all this is, if you're going to rectify your weaknesses, you have to admit your insufficiency to your own shame. Now, if the gap between you and your ideal is so great that it paralyzes you, you shrink that, right?
We'll get back to talking to Jordan in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Maui Nui venison. Maui Nui venison is the most protein-dense and nutrient-dense red meat
Oh,
on the
nobody
planet.
cares, bro.
Thank you. Plus, they're the only stretch does is eat meat. So, 20% off by gut being talking about in the live shows is your comparison group is incorrect.
Well, I'm
The
fucking
fact
sell
that,
you something.
you know, we have the opportunity
Crazy-
to sit down
crazy
and listen
fucking
to anybody on the planet, right? The best minds, the best athletes, the best thinkers, the most articulate that are alive right now. All listen to the people that have died that were around when video cameras existed. And you can compare yourself to that group.
Yeah.
But that's not your comparison group. If you have the impetus to sit down and listen to me and you waffle on for 3 hours about these deep topics, these interesting ideas, you are so already selected out of the normal group. You're already asking yourself questions that
The right questions.
almost nobody else is, right? But because your comparison group are people that are unbelievably high performing. I remember before I started my podcast, I listened to you or to Sam or to Joe, and I'd think, God, their recall is amazing. It's like they've just got this eidetic memory, and everything that they've ever read is able to come to the surface, and they're able to say it in this way that's completely seamless and all the rest of it. You go, okay, well, are you really a person that's never recorded a podcast before going to compare yourself to Joe Rogan, man that's recorded 1,000 and spent 10,000 hours on stage and done all of this UFC commentary and done all of this stuff in terms of TV? Is that really who you're going to compare yourself to? And it's unfair. And the problem that I see is people who have big dreams for themselves and want to do great things, they like to set their sights high.
Yeah.
And yet they feel despondent in the comparison.
Yeah.
So I think
Well, there's a pride in that too, eh? Like,
I can be. I want to be.
well, or that's who I should be comparing myself to, right? That's the pride, and the pride is something like, I should be that, or even I could be that. It's like, well, maybe you could, but you're
That's
certainly
when
not
who
going
you are
to do
really
it,
wanna
as you
be.
already pointed out, without the apprenticeship, right? So you could say that the despondency is actually is in proportion to the false pride. Now, I wrote a chapter in, I think, my first book, which was compare yourself to who you are today, not to who someone else is. Sorry, I mangled that to some degree, but you get the point. The proper comparison group for you is you yesterday, because you can make. First of all, you're the only control group that's appropriate to you, because you have a certain set of possibilities and limitations and tragedies that are and comparing yourself to someone else on some dimension, but it's not a reasonable comparison because you don't know what talents they were blessed with, and you also don't know what opportunities they had that you didn't, etc. It's just not a reasonable comparison. It's a lot better to think about who you were and then to think, well, could you be somewhat better in some dimension? And the positive thing about that is the answer is almost always yes. Now, you can orient that transformation towards some stellar target, and that's a reasonable thing to do, but that doesn't exactly mean that you should compare yourself to that target. Aiming at something and comparing yourself to it are not exactly the same thing. Plus, your bloody comparison is also a delusion. You know, that's another thing that you have to understand, is that you look at the person you're jealous of, and really what you're doing is you're looking through a very narrow aperture at a very thin slice of their life. You're looking at the thin slice of their life that's turning out the best, but you're also looking at it.
Or you're looking at somebody streaming from a caravan trying to give this exact same advice. And all you can say is you come in and you just hate on the person and go, oh, you just live in a caravan, you're poor, you're this, you're that, right? So maybe the haters will learn something here. I hope some people find their way from me playing this. But yeah, feel free to discuss it, guys.
Thin slice of their life that's marketed to be the best, right? And you have no idea what the horror of that person's life might be in its totality.
Nobody knows how to
You
fix
have no
anything
idea.
anymore.
If the deal was, say you wanted to be Russell Brand, there's a good example. You wanted to be Russell Brand. You wanted to be as charismatic and as famous as he is. Well, your real wish is that you get to have everything Russell Brand has, but none of his problems. Well, come on. I mean, it's no wonder that a vision like that would make you despondent, because it's naive, it's resentful, it's jealous, it's bitter, and it's unreasonable. You have to take the good with the bad. You have to take the bad with the good. And people very rarely think about that when they're thinking about, the famous people they think they'd like to be.
There was a recent interview with Elon Musk where he said something. My mind is a storm. I don't think most people would want to be me.
Right.
They may think they would want to be me, but they don't. They don't know. They don't understand. What do you think of that? Elon's someone that people probably look up to and admire and aspire to be.
One of the downsides to high-level genius is, you might describe it as hypomania. So here's a simple test that people can do. So this is a test of something called verbal fluency. Verbal fluency is associated with creativity. And so here's a simple verbal fluency test. Write down as many four-letter words as you can in 3 minutes that begin with T. Okay, that's pretty constrained, 4 letters and T. Or write down as many words as you can in 3 minutes that begin with S. That's less constrained. All right, so there's quite a powerful correlation between the sheer number of words that you produce and your lifetime creative achievement, right? Especially in the artistic and verbal domains. That's different than vocabulary. Vocabulary is how many words you understand. Fluency is how many words you can produce in a given amount of time.
Of those
Yeah.
words. Yeah.
Well, people vary to a degree that you can hardly imagine. So some people, if you get them to do the 4-letter test in 3 minutes, they'll write down like 12 words. And some will write down 150. And the ones who are writing down 150, their minds are going at a hypomanic rate. They're just thinking 5 times as fast
Bing,
as...
bing, 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 bing.
Yeah, without any remission whatsoever. And when that gets completely out of control, you have a manic. You have someone who's manic. And there's nothing fun about manic. That's where the word maniac comes from. And someone who's manic has 1,000 different plans, each of which are 1 sentence long, that they're hyper enthusiastic about. They'll spend every cent of their money pursuing them, and things just go immediately to hell. And so that's the outer limit of pathology on the creative front. And someone like Musk, who's clearly a genius, that's what he's contending with in his internal landscape. Now, I'm not saying that he's manic, because I see no signs of that, but someone that creative is on that edge. Or you see someone like Ben Shapiro. I mean, it's very interesting to talk to Ben, because, and Russell Brand is the same way. Shapiro speaks, I think, more rapidly than anyone I ever met. But if you're with him, you see very clearly that he's probably thinking 5 times that fast.
Yep.
And that's a lot. Now, when I was writing Maps of Meaning, which was my first book, I had a very difficult time shutting off my mind. I was obsessed with that book. And so I was writing about 3 hours a day. And then I was thinking about the material like for 12 hours.
It's what my YouTube's like.
And the thoughts came as
Nobody appreciates it.
way faster than thinking. They probably came about as fast as I can read. I can read about 1,200 words a minute if the material isn't overwhelmingly dense. And so it was just non-stop thought for like 16 hours a day. That's part of the reason I started lifting weights. Because if I was lifting heavy
I'll be
enough weights,
thinking
that
of 1,200 words a minute while I've got 100 pounds on my back.
It was,
Yeah.
it was enough to shut it down.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it was also one of the reasons that I drank, because that was
Yep.
another thing that would shut it off.
Yeah. Well, I think the price that people pay to be the person that you admire is just such an interesting frame. To look at someone like Elon Musk. My mind is a storm. I don't think most people would want to be me. The price that you would have to pay in order to be me is not one that you would be.
His aftermarket
one of the richest men on
suck,
the planet.
man.
You get to, dance on stage and release cars that are bulletproof and put rockets in space and
Right.
stuff. Well, yeah, but what about all of the baggage? What's the
Yeah.
price? What's
Well,
the
he
entry price?
also appears to me to be hyper conscientious, and I know people who've worked with him. Like, Musk isn't just a creative genius; he's also an extremely conscientious engineer. And really conscientious engineers, they have very interesting minds. I like talking to engineers because my brother-in-law is a great engineer, and when he understands something, Jim, when he understands something, he understands how to build it out of atoms. right? Like he understands it at every single level. And Musk appears to me to be someone who's this rare combination of hyper creative, but also hyper conscientious.
Does
And I
that
know that he
wrangle-
works all the time.
Yeah, does that sort of hypertrophied executive function help to wrangle some of the diffuse creative energy? Oh, we're going to put it into this one thing at least for a while, and then we'll move on to another thing.
Yes, definitely. Eric Weinstein's a good example of someone. I hope Eric isn't annoyed by this, but Eric is unbelievably creative, but he's not particularly conscientious. And so and I think he found an occupation where that works extremely well, because I don't know if he's still doing this, but he worked with Peter Thiel for quite a long time as his idea man, right? And Eric's an extremely interesting person. Musk is hyper creative, and as far as I can tell, hyper conscientious. And the conscientiousness does focus. And that lots of people who are creative aren't conscientious. Well, it's rare. Like if you're there's no correlation between creativity and conscientiousness. Okay, so if you're 1 in 1,000, if you're the most creative person in 1,000, and you're the most conscientious person in 1,000, you're one.
Yeah, you're going all right,
in a million.
Jay.
And Musk is probably more like one person in 100 million, right? Something like that, maybe more,
Yeah, just putting in the work, guys.
or maybe a billion. Right?
I'm done sitting in front of the camera.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's
to
stopping my life to talk and educate people, and nobody's taking action. So he can talk. I got stuff to do. We'll probably still do an evening chat, but I'm going to keep them a lot shorter. I'm done being so nice about it. It's either you put it in or you don't. You know.
Was it 2006?
So what's about?
2016.
2016.
Yeah. Sorry. How have you found fame change you? What's been impacted or changed due to the scrutiny and the surveillance and the adoration and the criticism?
Well, the first thing that changed, I think, was that I saw misery on a scale that I hadn't really seen it before. I had worked as a clinician for a long time, and I worked with, say, 20 people a week. And I was always in the realm of difficult existential problems, wrestling with my clients' problems alongside them. And I liked that a lot. And then I had my research. How widely spread the demoralization in our culture was. Other than that, and that was a real shock, and it was very hard on me, I would say. Everything else about it has been, at minimum, ridiculously interesting. I have an unbelievable wealth of opportunity. I'd be a fool to be anything but abjectly grateful. I mean, the misery that I saw was a shock, and it hurt me, and it was part of what
How
made me ill.
How did that impact you? Did it change the way that you see the world at all?
It made me understand more deeply how important it was to offer people an encouraging word. I could see that so many people were dying psychologically or actually for lack of an encouraging word. And so it made being in the position to provide that much more necessary. I mean, part of the reason that Tammy and I tour constantly is because it seems to be good. It seems to be a good thing. You know, we've even seen changes in the audience. So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we did our first tour, a lot of the people who came to the talks were in pretty rough shape. There were more men than there are now, like the proportion of men to women was higher. And the men were generally there alone, and a lot of them were looking pretty ragged around the edges. And now, 5 years later, half the audience comes in suits. Like, it's as if they're dressed for a wedding. Most of the guys are there with some woman. The audience members are doing much better, and the lecture events are extremely positive. You know, if you looked at my life from the outside, you'd think that I was in a constant storm of, you know, aggravated controversy, but all of that, virtually all of that, is virtual. It's just in the online world. Now, it touches the actual world from time to time because I am being pursued by my regulatory college in Ontario. Yeah, which is, you know, mostly just an annoyance, and a preposterous annoyance, a preposterous, expensive, and time-consuming annoyance. But apart from that, everything that's happened around me has been positive. That's a strange thing too. Positive at such an intensity that even that is daunting. You know, you'd think it's hard to imagine that you could be in a situation where things are so positive that you can barely stand it. But I am in that situation, and it's quite something to contend with. I was fortunate, I suppose, to some degree, that it didn't happen to me till I was old, because I've never really got accustomed to it.
I've had a thought about this, observing what's happened to you, and, you know, the Weinsteins are a good example of this too. We often hear the perils of getting fame too young. The Macaulay Culkins of the world, the Britney Spears of the world, you know, individuals who don't have any sense of identity being thrust into a non-representative experience of the world, and they're completely unmoored. But I think that there's an equally interesting question to ask. Okay, and what happens if you think you know who you are? If you've spent decades, 5 decades, 6 decades of your life understanding your place, your status, the trajectory that you're on, and then out of nowhere, you get ripped away from all of the areas of reference, all of the waymarkers that you thought you knew, and now you're just floating in the air. I imagine that could be even more disquieting.
I'm just honestly, Gravity, I'm just playing this kind of stuff now, and with the like mental health talks and stuff, like I'm just done sitting for hours on a caravan explaining things to people. So I give them the recipe of how to make life better, and then people don't do the workout. People watch these work kind of streams. Usually I'm chatting throughout and I'm distracted. So now I'm just doing more background work. I can just flow and do my stuff. People can listen to the same stuff that got me there, you know, because that's how I learned, right? Listening to podcasts while I work, you know, you don't sit and watch them. So that's what I'm doing. But yeah, I'm not going to be as pleasant, you know, as people pleasing about the self-help advice stuff. You know, you guys just got to take it on your own. I realized that the only way up is from rock bottom, and if you haven't hit it yet, if you're not actually ready to change your life, you're not ready, right? And a lot of people, like, they just want to learn and learn. That's the trap of self-improvement, is you just get stuck and I need to learn more. You don't need to learn more. You stop overthinking. You just go put 5 minutes at something. But yeah, you know, there's learning there, but people should be working while they watch me and stuff, right? Listen to this, so whatever. I don't know.
In some ways.
I'm just putting it out there. See how the world responds, I suppose, right?
Well, when everything blew up around me to begin with, it was stressful, I would say, because my job was
gathering up
online,
weeds,
my university
leaves, and
job,
stuff.
and I never thought that would happen. I mean, when I worked at Harvard and at the University of Toronto, that was all positive. Like, I really liked working with my graduate students. I had at least cordial relationships with my fellow faculty members. At Harvard, they were more than cordial. At the University of Toronto, most of the faculty members that I started to develop friendships with were also those who ended up moving away. And they were often people who got offers from other places, and, you know, they would disappear. And so a lot of the friends I developed at the University of Toronto went elsewhere. And so I didn't get as tightly tied in with regards to friendship networks among my peers as I had at Harvard, for example. But I had great relationships with undergraduates and with my graduate students. That was plenty. Like, I loved working with my graduate students. And so it wasn't like I was pining and alone, not at all. And I had a good network of friends. And so then that was threatened and really disappeared in 2016. And my clinical practice was threatened. And so that was unsettling. I think there were things that continued, though. Even when I was teaching as a university professor, the way I taught wasn't typical. The things I taught weren't typical. I thought for decades, eventually someone's going to find out what I'm teaching, and there's going to be trouble. I couldn't believe I was allowed, encouraged to teach what I was teaching. But the universities, and this was particularly true of Harvard in the 90s, that's how they were structured.
What was so rebellious about what you were teaching?
Well, there wasn't really anybody who was concentrating on the nexus between, say, archetypal and religious ideas in neuroscience. So that wasn't a thing. I mean, there was a few people, Jaak Panksepp was one of them, who a lot of the researchers who were interested in the neuroscience of emotion became interested in deep narrative, because they started to understand that our emotional life is a story. That's a good way of thinking about it. And that we're guided by our emotional instincts. And what our emotional instincts do is put us into certain stories. That's what it means to be in love, for example, is that you're in a love story. And
it's not a particular balance of oxytocin and endorphins that you are aware of. It's not broken down to its constituent parts.
No, definitely not.
Part of a narrative.
Sorry guys, just running around doing things like I'm cleaning up all the leaves and stuff, simple tasks around home, picking up leaves and stuff, like I run a channel, I talk about this on a daily basis. This wasn't meant to be my task, this was meant to be my partner's task, but she doesn't live here anymore, so I'm able to just take it on myself and get the work done, That's how life goes, man.
Tell yourself about what this means and how this feels.
Right. Well, and it's interesting
That's
that the
either-
instinct manifests
Either get the message of the
itself as a
channel,
story.
or just,
And
no
so
point
I
in
was
being here.
very interested in narrative and story, and also, see, no psychologist studied Carl Jung, like literally, virtually none.
Really?
No. Oh yeah, no, definitely not. I mean, psychology really developed in some ways as the materialist antithesis to psychoanalysis. So Freud and Jung, and even Adler to some degree, they were off limits for scientifically trained behavioral psychologists. And that's what I was and am. Like, I trained at McGill. There were no courses in psychoanalytic theory at McGill. I read Freud and Jung completely on my own, flying in the face of the advice that I was getting even from my well-meaning graduate supervisor, who was a great guy and who never got in my way in the least, quite the contrary. But I was warned, for example, when I went on the job market, not to talk about the things that I was truly interested in. And I ignored that, by the way, and what that meant was some places that I went to apply for it.
Yeah, you go step by step. Yeah, it's all about consistency. But yeah, as I always say, you got to cut off what's cut off what's killing you, cut off what's stopping you. You can't do anything. Quite often it's easier to just cut people out of your lives who are causing issues and just do it yourself. I'd rather just take the load on myself, free up the time. Something might be reconcilable there, but we'll see. But for the moment, I'm not going to bullshit on here. For the moment, I'm going to say it how it is. I've sent Susie back to her parents for a night or two so I can actually function and focus and sleep. And with how I'm feeling, I got sick of having the whole same conversation 100 times. Just like I do on the channel. You get sick of saying the same thing over and over and over and nothing changes. It's why, same reason I've had it with the channel and I've had it with Dad. It's not really the relationship that's the thing. It's just I've decided I have to put my foot down on what I'm doing with my life and how I get things done. And the channel, I may end up deleting the channel, guys. I may end up stopping doing YouTube, frankly, because it's just really not serving me. I'm trying to help other people, but as I say, if people aren't getting the message, I'm not going to continue at it, right? Same as a relationship. If the message isn't being received, if the work isn't getting done, I'm not going to build a whole property on my own. If somebody can't break up some leaves so I can do the important work, you know, it's as simple as that. So it sucks to talk about it, but this is the reality of life. Don't get me wrong, Susie's an amazing person. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to talk shit or anything. It just comes under irreconcilable differences. I think when she's older, I think when she gets it, she'll get it. But it's gonna take time. And like I can't wait. I can't sit there and get frustrated that somebody's just not doing the most basic stuff I need done around here and contributing to the partnership in that way. So we'll see. Again, lovely person. I hope it works out. We'll see, Nakai. We'll see. We'll see. Because I'm giving up a lot of my time and I'm putting myself out there in the world, and then I do the morning workouts and people don't do the workout. I do these work streams that you're meant to be working while I'm working. You're meant to be listening. This is what I'm doing. I'm listening to podcasts and I'm working. I talk about this all the time on the channel. And yeah, I lost my shit on live this morning about doing these things, about getting your life together, about getting on with it. And that I'm getting up every morning doing the push-ups. So I can just delete the channel. I'm still going to do my push-ups. I'm still going to do everything I do. I'm still going to do. I'm going to do it even faster without a YouTube channel because I'm not stopping my workflow to do this. I'm not stopping to try help everybody else. So if people are not going to get the message and put in the work and learn from what I'm trying to teach. So when I've been learning this stuff for 5 years with all my autism, ADHD, depression, this is how you get out of it. And I'm giving everybody the blueprint on how to do it. And people, like, they just come and just keep, they're not putting in the action. So it seems pretty pointless for me to be doing. You know, I'm giving up my time for free. I don't make any money off YouTube. So yeah, it's just I want to serve other people, but I want to try help anybody I could. But if you're not ready, you're not ready, right? You have to be so pissed off with yourself that I have to change. You have to understand that you have to change. You have to grow. And you have to be at that every day. It doesn't matter how shit you feel. You have to keep at it. You have to learn. You have to grow. But everyone wants to doom scroll and waste their lives. So it just seems... I know you're trying, Nakai. You'd be fine without me, mate. You'll be all right. Just put in the work. It's a very simple message. Like, you don't need to sit and listen to me for hours and hours. Put in the work. Try and make life better. Get rid of the friends. Get rid of the things that are hurting you and move forward, man. Beyond that, I can't stand here and talk all day. I can't sit in a caravan and talk all day at people. Like, I'm giving up 4 hours a day to sit there and help everybody with mental health and explain that I do a morning workout, then we do the work, then we have an evening wind down chill stream. And people just come on in the chat time and they're like, oh, great information. But the actual work, they're not doing the work. All they're doing is taking in the knowledge, but they're not actually applying it to their life. So it seems to be a pointless endeavor. It seems I'm giving up my time to try and give all this information. But I sort of came to the conclusion last night, but maybe people need to hit that rock bottom. Maybe people need to go where I went, to the absolute depths of alcoholism, and you're on the edge of being homeless and everything's going absolutely to hell. Well, that's when you have, you either give up or you dig your toes in. Like, people are like, why can you do everything? How can you do so much? How do you tell? Because I didn't have a choice, man. It was build this garage, build this, live in a caravan, or lose everything, man. So I made it work. I don't know how to teach that. I don't know how to teach it, man. The best I can do.
Job didn't want me, but then Harvard did, so that worked out quite nicely. And that's one of the advantages, too, also of being true to your own vision, is that you won't get what you don't want. See, I didn't want to go work somewhere where they wouldn't want me. It's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. So what do you do about that? Well, unfairly
unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes. It's not an accident that the axiomatic Western individual is someone who was unfairly nailed to a cross and tortured. It's like, yes, right, exactly. So what do you do about that? Well, I thought about that for a long time too. It's like, well, you don't get together in a damn mob, because all that does is allow you to be as horrible as you could possibly imagine and suffer from none of the consequences. That's a bad idea. So how about we don't do that? Well, there's a deep idea in the West too. It's like, pick up your damn suffering and bear it and try to be a good person so you don't make it worse. Well, that's a truth. You know, I read a lot about the terrible things that people have done to each other. You just cannot even imagine it. It's so awful. So you don't want to be someone like that. Now, do you have a reason to be? Yes. You have lots of reasons to be. God, there's reasons to be resentful about your existence. Everyone you know is going to die. You know, you too. And there's going to be a fair bit of pain along the way, and lots of it's going to be unfair. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're resentful. It's like, act it out and see what happens. You make everything you're complaining about infinitely worse. There's this idea that hell is a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse. So you think, well, what do you do about that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is like. It's suffering. That's what the religious people have always said. Life is suffering. Yes. Well, who wants to admit that? Well, just think about it. Well, so what do you do in the face of that suffering? Try to reduce it. Start with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself together, for Christ's sake, so that when your father dies, you're not whining away in a corner, and you can help plan the funeral, and you can stand up solidly so that people can rely on you. That's better. Don't be a damn victim. Of course you're a victim. Jesus, obviously. Put yourself together. And then maybe if you put yourself together, you know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you, if you'll admit it. You know there's a few things you could, like, polish up a little bit, that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having them be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're, like, doomed to spend Christmas with. So then you fix yourself up a little bit, kind of humbly, because, you know, God, you're a fixer-upper if there ever was one. And then you got to figure out, well, can you figure out how to make peace with your idiot brother? And probably not, because he's just as dumb as you, so how the hell are you going to manage that? And so then maybe you get somewhere that way, and your family's sort of functioning, and you find out, well, that kind of relieved a little bit of suffering, although it reduced the opportunities for spiteful revenge, and that's kind of a pain in the neck. And so then you get your family together a little bit, and you're a little clued in then, at least a bit, because you've done something difficult that's actually difficult. You're a little wiser, so then maybe you could put a tentative finger out beyond the family and try to change some little thing without wrecking it. It's like, our society is complex, and we teach our students that they could just fix it. It's like, go fix a military helicopter and see how far you get with that. It's like, what are you going to do? You're like a chimp with a wrench. Whack! Oh, look, it's better. It's like, no, it's not better. Things are complicated, and to fix things is really hard. And you have to be like a golden tool to fix things, and you're not. So, and that's the other message of the West. It's like, how do you overcome the suffering of life? I'm not saying it's only the message of the West. How do you overcome the suffering of life? Is be a better person. That's how you do it. Well, that's hard. It takes responsibility. And I think, you know, if you said to someone, you want to have a meaningful life? Everything you do matters. That's the definition of a meaningful life. But everything you do matters. You're going to have to carry that with you. Or do you want to just forget about the whole meaning thing and then you don't have any responsibility, because who the hell cares? And you can wander through life doing whatever you want, gratifying impulsive desires for how useful that's going to be. And you're stuck in meaninglessness, but you don't have any responsibility. Which one do you want? Well, ask yourself, which one are you pursuing? And you'll find very rapidly that it isn't the majority of your soul that's pursuing the whole meaning thing, because, well, look what you have to do that. You have to take on the fact that life is suffering. You have to put yourself together in the face of that. Well, that's hard. Christ, it's amazing people can even do it. I'm stunned every day when I go outside, and it isn't a riot with everything burning. You can really, God, you talk to people, it's like, I knew this guy, he'd been in a motorcycle accident, and it really ruined him, and he was like a linesman, working on the power, and he was working with someone who had Parkinson's disease, and they had complementary inadequacies, and so two of them could do the job of one person, and so they're out there fixing
Motorcycle
power lines
accident.
in the freezing cold, despite the fact that one was 3/4 wrecked with a motorcycle accident, the other one had Parkinson's. It's like, that's how our civilization works. It's like, there's all these rude people out there, they've got problems like you can't believe. Off they go to work and do things they don't even like, and look, the lights are on. My God, it's unbelievable. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And we're so ungrateful. College students, postmodern types, they're so ungrateful. They don't know that they're surrounded by just a bloody miracle. It's a miracle that all this stuff works. That all you crazy chimpanzees that don't know each other can sit in the same room for 2 hours sweltering away without tearing each other apart, because that's what chimps do. So, anyways, what happened? Well, I made some videos, and I got to the bottom of some things, at least as far as I can tell, so I told you what the bottom is, and then I got this idea about what you might do about it, which isn't my idea. Like, it's not my idea. It's an old idea, far older than Christianity. It's old. It's the oldest story of mankind. Get yourself together. Transcend your suffering. See if you can be some kind of hero. Make the suffering in the world less. Well, that's the way forward, as far as I can tell, if there is any way forward. And that's what's under assault by the postmodernists. So look out, because they know exactly what they're doing, and they know exactly why they're doing it.
No, I did not PG. I have not blocked you, mate. You're all good. How are the dogs? Are you all good? Alright, guys, that's today's lesson. I'm going to go chill out for a bit. I'm going to go live my life. Hope you guys have a good day. Nah, not that I've changed my mind. No, I was just making a point. I was making a point, guys. Like, that's reality. I'm just making the point like this. There's no point people being on this channel if they're not going to listen. There's no point me putting a camera on my life and talking about it if you're not going to apply it. This is the trap of self-improvement. The learning is good. Everything you've learned there, but what are you going to do from that today? What are you going to apply? What's actually going to change? That's what I want. If you're subscribed to this channel, I want you to actually be putting in the effort. If you have a question, I'll answer it, but I'm done like coddling everybody and telling them, oh, the things will be okay, and you put in the work, and then they don't put in the work, and then they're still complaining about the same damn problem. I'm sick of, it's what I used to be sick of with people before I cut off all my old friends and stuff and old relationships, is what are you actually applying? What are you actually doing? What are you actually doing in life with the information you've got and the things you say you want to do and this and that and whatever? What are you actually changing? But people just want to whine and they're like, oh, I'm not doing too good, things are struggling. So, well, get outside, go do some chores, go do some shit. Like, I used to do this in a really nice way. Just, just get outside, man. Just put, like, if you're overthinking, just put 5 minutes, all real friendly. It hasn't worked because it clearly has not worked because people are not actually applying it. So it's not only a waste of my time, it's a waste of anybody viewing. If you're going to be doom scrolling and you stop on me and you say you get the message and I answer your questions, everybody's just wasting their time, right? So the new era of the channel, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to straight shoot it as straight as I can. And if people don't like it, go watch something else. Go watch some bullshit. Go stay in that same loop. Go stay in that same pattern. And then continue to complain about your life and how it is and the problems you have. And my friend that pisses me off, cut the friend off. Like, change the thing and go after what you want. Instead of allowing in all the stuff you don't want, go after the thing you do want. Anybody stands in the way of it, cut them off. Move forward. Yeah, you see it everywhere, man. Nothing is going to change until you do it for you. Like, and people are like, you angry, whatever. I've already done it, bro. I'm already doing it. Like, 3 years ago, this was a sheep paddock. I built a 6-car garage and I'm in the middle of building a house. Like, I don't need people coming on here going, oh, you're vaping. I'm not here for this shit. I may do a chat stream tonight, but again, I don't have all day to sit in a caravan talking to people who are not going to apply what I'm saying. I've got a house to build. I've got shit to do, man. I've got my own life to live. I'm here to help other people up from where I came from. But if people are not going to listen and not going to apply it, it's not the right channel for you. If you're not going to apply what I'm trying to teach, which is what got me from a depressed alcoholic to building my own garage, building my own house, if you're not going to listen, don't follow me. Don't listen to it. I've booted my own partner out of the house yesterday for not listening to what I have to, for not doing what I have to say because she can't even rake a fucking driveway. Like, she thinks that going to work and then coming home and doing the 5 dishes we have and like doing the washing is sufficient when we're trying to build an entire property here, which means it all falls on me. So I've sent her away and I'm thinking about what I do about it. Sent her back to her parents' place. I slept like a baby. I was asleep by 9. Chill as, didn't have somebody rustling around my place all the time or irritating me. Or having to fucking try and explain the task that he's doing and trying to just explain myself again. Slept like a baby, got up early, had a really productive day. Cut out what's killing you. It may work out, it might not, I don't know. I'm deciding what I do, but at the moment I'm on top of the fucking world. It's way easier for me to, it takes less time for me to do the task she wasn't doing than it does for me to explain myself every 2 days and try and make it happen. This is what it is. Lovely person, love her to bits, but like, if the worker, I'm not going to build all this shit on my fucking own. Like, I completely can, but I'm not going to bring somebody else into that who isn't going to contribute. You know, it's meant to be working together to build it. It's as simple as that. No, I'm not gay. Anyway, I may do another stream today. I may not. I don't know. I got shit to do. 7:30 a.m. tomorrow, New Zealand time. 7:30 a.m. is when the stream starts. 5 minutes later, I will be doing 500 push-ups. 200 push-ups, sorry. We'll do 200 push-ups. I'm in the middle of talking about something, bro. Can you fuck off? So tomorrow morning, I'm doing 200 push-ups, same as I do every day. This is to start the day and balance your dopamine out, to get your mind able to cope with the other stuff in life, right? So 7:30 a.m. sharp, the stream starts. Within 5 minutes, I start doing push-ups. 10 push-ups a minute, every minute for 20 minutes. If you're not going to do the stuff, go for a morning walk or something. If you're not going to do any of what my channel is about, and you're not going to apply the lessons and get up in the morning, and instead of doom scrolling on your phone and shit, you're going to actually get up and just go out in the sunlight, go for a walk or something, then unsubscribe from my channel because it's useless information to you. All you're doing is learning more, right? Cool. See you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. Yeah.